Hello and welcome to a video about how to ace your AP English Literature exam, the third essay, which is free response. Today we're going to talk about these few points so that you can be successful. First one is how to pick your book, things to consider, and developing a theme statement for your book so that understanding the book you can apply it to the prompt you're given. And lastly, I will share with you the brief essay structure that I used. I recommend you use the structure that you've used throughout high school and just condense it a little bit for the 40-minute exam. Okay, so book picking. I've read many AP literature prep books, and they also you need to prepare at least 2 to 3 books for your exam. And make sure that the books you pick are as different as possible. As different as possible, as in their form, such as a novel and a play, as different as possible in time. It's best if you have at least 100 years gap between the two books that you choose, and as diverse themes as possible. So just for me, I picked Othello and Jane Eyre. Othello was something we read in high school, and Jane Eyre was something that I just genuinely really liked and read many, many times. What I found was because I didn't understand Othello as well, it was harder for me to understand how the prompt that I was given actually fit into Othello, even though Othello was under the list that they provided saying this is a perfect book for this prompt. So that is why when you choose a book, it's best to choose something you understand well. But at the same time, the AP books advise that you should always prepare one Shakespeare. I know sometimes Shakespeare is hard to understand, but I found that if one of your books don't work, Shakespeare will probably work. Shakespeare has so many themes, it's always usable on the AP exam. And when you bring Shakespeare into your exam, you want to make sure you fill in one of those book reflection forms so that you can, those forms which ask you what are the 3 major plot events and what are some major symbolism and what are some 3 characters that are important and why, so that you can actually check where in Shakespeare you're lacking understanding and fill that gap in. So that can help you collect your thoughts respecting Shakespeare. When I read Shakespeare, I always read the modern translation in my English classes. It's best to understand a book rather than just not understanding it but having finished the original version. But you need to understand the book so that you can apply it to the prompt. I found that for me, this is probably my bias. I find it safer to bring in a major literary canon, a major classic into the book. So for example, one of those books that appears several times on the free response recommended books. I just find that the big books have a lot more theme in it, and it's just safer. In high school, their English AP class read this kind of more obscure book, and everyone ended up writing on that book, which was fine. But I just think the chances of choosing a big book to appear on the list that you're given is a lot greater, and it just makes you feel a lot safer, even though you don't have to write based on the list they provide. I've also taken a look at the last 10 years, what books appeared and what books didn't. I found Great Expectations by Charles Dickens appeared 9 years out of 10, which is pretty remarkable. Wuthering Heights at least 7 to 8 times out of 10 years. Jane Eyre 5 times out of 10 years. But of course, when you choose your book, choose something that you really like, can read several times and review, and not just bland reading, but appreciating the symbolism and metaphors that are embedded. Okay, so that's all for book picking. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about theme statement. Theme statement is really detailed. I will make a separate video to go into the details, but today we'll just go over things a little blandly. So this was my theme statement for Jane Eyre. When I look for a theme statement, what I always do is I start by finding the central agony. Where is a character under the most distress? So that will be the middle part of my theme statement, as you can see. And the first part of my theme statement is the initial incident of the entire story. And the last part is how I wouldn't just say resolution, but how the central agony was resolved. What triggered the resolution of a central agony? Okay, so with this theme statement, um, we're going to try to tackle the prompt. So in 2021, the theme was home. The prompt was home. Well, actually, the prompt was house, but you don't want to talk too literal on your essay. So first, you always reinterpret the symbolism of house into home. So you have something more metaphorical to deal with and more theme-like to deal with rather just something concrete. So these are the three ways that I would embed home into my theme statement. As you can see, the parallelism between struggle to repress human needs means loss of comfort and home is comfort. Reinterpret societal expectations and invent a unique individualized path. And that is in a way reinvent their own idea of home and house. Instead of changing herself for someone to fit in the house of someone else, she is reinventing her own ideal of internal comfort and the things that she wants in permanence. Home is about permanence. Where in the end of a book she becomes comfortable and useful, and in a sense she finds the ideal comfort from the house, from the home that she invents for herself. And another example would be hierarchy, which is a 2022 AP prompt. This Jane Eyre was practically all about hierarchy, so I used my theme statement. Whatever the prompt is, a keyword, I would just throw it into my theme statement, which becomes then a thesis because it's the answer. Hierarchy, on the prompt, there were examples such as economic, political, and a couple others. But since I didn't have any politics in my book, I reinterpreted hierarchy as just inequity between two classes, two groups, inequity. So economic, there was some in Jane Eyre. I also talked about the struggle between male and female, so there's a hierarchy between patrimony and matrimony. And finally, theocracy, the interpretation of religion and the obedience of, and that I put in my theme statement as well. And these are points that I ended up discussing in my essay structure. So a little bit about essays. It is more important to finish all three essays than make one essay super long. I say this because I found that the samples for scoring 5 essays are so long. They're 3 pages long, and I have no idea how they were able to handwrite 3 pages, single spaced, in 40 minutes for one essay. I really have no idea. For me, each of my essays were on average 1 page, single space, and 1/4 of 1 more page. Also, on your essay, they will ask you to write single spaced. Okay, so the essay structure that I used, I just adapted what I learned in high school, what my teacher taught me, and then condensed it. I did this because just trying to find a time to reinvent a whole new structure just for the AP essay was not efficient, and there's no set structure where you need to abide by. And since I was already very used to this for 3 years, I just used this. So my first paragraph and my third paragraph is just like a checkbox. Make it as short as I can, and as long as I have covered universal statement, the novel by this person, and my theme statement stated, that's paragraph 1, paragraph 3, all good. And then the bulk of my meat is in paragraph 2. I dissected my theme into 3 parts: a statement about the character trait, which is just a restatement of the first part of my theme statement, a quote or a piece of proof that I prepare ahead of the exam and just throw in there. My proofs are only 3 words long, honestly. And finally, an explanation of how the proof meets this theme statement. So proof, let's see how I would put it. Insert proof is evident of one part of my theme statement, because that's kind of the flow which I went with. And what I find is, to avoid being too literal, examine the why of proof happened. Why did this proof happen? Don't talk about things that necessarily happened in the novel, but the internal motives of why they did something. So what your essay should end up looking like is, it should look like a discussion of philosophy. If it does, you're probably on the right track. And I find that if my essays don't make sense, they like it even more. If my ideas don't make sense to myself, it's so metaphysical, they like it. So that's just something that I find quite funny. And so don't be afraid if that's what your essay end up looking like, metaphysical. They don't mind that. Some of them do quite like that. And so this is all I have to say about your AP Literature free response. If this was helpful, remember to share with a friend or someone in the AP English class and hit a like. Thank you.